If you've ever been in the market for a new home, you know home shopping can be a lot. There's so much you don't know and so much you need to know. What are the neighborhoods like? What are the schools like? Who is the agent who knows the listing or neighborhood best? And why can't all this information just be in one place?
Well, now it is on Homes.com. They've got everything you need to know about the listing itself, but even better, they've got comprehensive neighborhood guides and detailed reports about local schools. And their agent directory helps you see the agent's current listings and sales history. Homes.com collaboration tools make it easier than ever to share all this information with your family. It's a whole cul-de-sac of home shopping information all at your fingertips. Homes.com. We've done your homework. Hello and welcome to Happier, a podcast where we talk about ideas and strategies for making our lives happier, healthier, more productive, and more creative. This week is an Ask Us Anything episode. It's been a while since we did an Ask Us Anything episode. This was so much fun. I am Gretchen Rubin, a writer who studies happiness, good habits, the five senses, and human nature. I'm in my little home office in New York City, and joining me today from Los Angeles is my sister, Elizabeth Kraft. And Elizabeth, I love answering these questions with you.
Yes, that's me, Elizabeth Kraft, a TV writer and producer living in LA. And yeah, there's some answers I'm interested to hear from you, Gretch. Some questions where I don't know what your answer will be.
Likewise. But first, one quick update.
Yes, Leah said, Gretchen brought up a pop-up book club for Iris Murdoch's novels in a recent More Happier episode. There is something so compelling about a limited course of study or reading. Sometimes limited reading lists produce limitless ideas and conversations. If possible, I and hopefully other listeners would love to participate in this pop-up book club in whatever capacity. And she says, well wishes from a big fan and fellow book lover, and congrats on 1,000 episodes.
That's so fun. I know exactly what she's talking about. Like, it's like the limited TV series where it's like 8 episodes. There's something you can really complete it. And there's something very satisfying about it. And I know I like the idea of just like a one author book club meeting. So I don't know if we can do that together, but it was fun for me to hear that other people thought that that sounded like a good idea because it really does sound fun.
Yes, something to ponder.
Something to ponder. And now ask us anything. Let us dive in. Now, we ended up getting so many questions that we are going to split this discussion into 2 episodes. So the first is loosely questions related to family relationships and happiness, habits, and the 4 tendencies.
And then in an upcoming episode, we'll answer questions about the podcast, writing, and our personal lives.
Yeah.
So let's dive into questions regarding our family relationships.
Okay, this comes from Annika. What has been your favorite age or ages of your children? I am a mother of a 3-year-old and a 3-month-old. There are hard parts and absolutely incredible parts of both these ages, and I am loving watching these 2 little people grow up. Since you 2 are farther along in your parenting journey, I'm curious, what age did you love the most with your kids? Well, first, I would say the days are long, but the years are short. It's so true. But I also think the happiest time is now, right? Don't you always feel that way?
Yes, I was going to say the same thing. I like now. I mean, part of that is because I think I actively am not a lover of having a toddler. I think that is just so hard.
Yeah.
At the time, I probably would have said, oh, now, because he's starting to talk, right?
Yes.
I love now because I just love talking to Jack. And, you know, the older he gets, the more I like talking to him. So I would say
like he turned you on to hip hop. Like that's something that it comes. Yeah. I think it's every time. I remember when I had a kindergartner, I was like, ooh, those beastly high schoolers, like they're, you know, and then you have a high schooler and you're like, oh, they're so wonderful. So I feel like whatever time is now.
Here's what I will say, because she has young kids. Physically, it gets a lot easier to be a parent.
Yes.
Once they pass like age 5.
Yes.
Karen says, give us an Eliza and Eleanor and Jack update.
Okay. Eliza lives downtown. She is starting a graduate program in the fall, so she's very excited about that. She's really doing great. Eleanor took a gap year, and so she will be a freshman in college in the fall. So, yes, I have my open door. It's getting ready to open. That is what is happening.
Yes, and Jack is going into 9th grade, which is
Bananas.
hard to believe that he's actually going to be a high schooler. He is very tall, taller than I am, and growing. And yeah, he's doing great. Like I said, I love talking to him.
It's great. Elaine says, do your husbands ever do anything together? Not really. We've talked about going on some kind of golf trip because they both enjoy golf, but we've never pulled that off, have we, Elizabeth?
Not yet. They spend time together when we're in Kansas City and everybody enjoys each other. But, it's not as if we do live on the other side of the coast.
There have been a couple times where the three of you came to New York City and we all hung out. But yeah, it's like we all hang out. It's not like they're going on a fishing trip together or something like that. But everybody gets along great. Yeah. Teresa says, why did Gretchen space her children 6 years apart? Well, part of it was that I was already inclined to have a bigger gap because, Elizabeth, you and I have a big gap. We have a 5-year gap. I'm older by 5 years, and that's been great for us. So I think I was just naturally that way. But then it turned out that because Jamie had hepatitis C, which has been miraculously cured. Well, I shouldn't say miraculously. It wasn't a miracle. It was science. Science cured hepatitis C that he got when he was 8 years old. But before a cure was discovered, he was part of some trials. Kind of around the time that I probably would have thought about getting pregnant, he was part of a trial where it wasn't advisable to do it because of the treatment this experimental treatment that he was doing. So it was a little bit longer than we would naturally have done, but we were already thinking it was going to be like 4 or 5 years. So that was our thinking.
Yes, and they're very close, Eliza.
They're very close. Yeah, just like we're close. They're very close too.
Meredith said, having children changes everything. How did your sister relationship evolve when Gretchen's first daughter joined the dynamic?
That's such an interesting question.
It is.
Can I tell the story, Elizabeth, of how you were there when Eliza was born?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, this was a big sisterly adventure. So why were you in town visiting Mindy? Why were you in New York City?
I don't remember why, but I was seeing friends. I was with friends,
Yes. And so I had a condition when I was pregnant with Eliza where I was put on bed rest and they said sort of like, we're going to monitor her growth. And at a certain point, we will decide that her growth will be better out than in. Like a baby does better growing naturally, but that at a certain point, her growth was going to be too restricted. And so they were monitoring me very closely. And the day came when they were like, okay, it's Friday. You're having this baby 7 a.m. on Monday morning. And so, okay, that was scary. And they also said, we really recommend that fathers, if they can, get a good night's sleep the night before, because this day can be really stressful. There's a lot going on. So if you can get a good night's sleep, that would be good. And Elizabeth, you were just in town. Yeah, you were visiting friends. And so you came over and spent the night with me in the hospital. And it was so reassuring to have you there.
I love that night. That was such a great memory. I loved being there. Of course, I wish I could have stayed for the whole thing, but eventually Jamie did come in the morning.
Yes, Jamie came in the morning.
And
yes,
he took
I was induced.
Over.
Yeah.
But I love that. It's funny because I feel like our relationship changed more with the birth of this podcast than with the birth of our kids.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, because we were like in constant communication and have to work together. Yeah, I don't remember that it changed that much about our sisterly relationship after Eliza was born.
Yeah, but we love having the nieces.
And then, that is super fun. Robert said, what did you experience in your childhood visits to Nebraska that you rarely experience in adulthood? What were the sights, scents, sounds, tastes, and textures of childhood visits there? Oh, this is such a happy question to think about.
Oh my gosh, Gretch, so much.
Okay, can I guess what your first thought will be?
Yes.
King's?
Yes.
Yeah, because there was this restaurant, King's, that we loved. It had little telephones that you could call in your order from your table. We thought this was like the height of cool.
Well, and deep fried grilled cheese sandwiches, which you cannot get. I mean, anything about King's, I can't get anymore.
No.
And then the thing that I miss the most, which we can never experience again from our childhood visits, is our grandparents' houses.
Oh, yes.
Because the kitchens of each house.
Yes. Where we slept, the rooms where we slept.
Yes. The rock garden in the back of Grandma and Grandpa's house was so specific with its feel and the way it looked.
Yeah, and the sweet peas that grew in our other grandmother's backyard. Our grandparents lived 5 minutes apart from each other. We would ride our bikes back and forth between them because both of our parents grew up in North Platte, Nebraska, so our grandparents lived very close to each other. just in the flatness of it. And it's funny because our parents, it is a landscape that many people do not appreciate, which is the beauty of a very flat landscape. And I think I really learned to love that kind of giant sky. Yeah, we would go out to the outskirts of, our grandparents lived fairly near the outskirts of town. And there was that big park, Cody Park, remember, with the peacocks?
Oh, yes. Also, there's a great place called Fort Cody, which was a souvenir shop.
My goodness.
That has the most specific smell. It had this wood floor that creaked when you walked. Very specific types of things.
Such a
sold.
Touristy. If it was the most touristy thing, and ever since then, I have had such affection for any kind of extremely touristy shop. I cannot resist the keychains, the gag gifts.
Yes.
The strange objects, the shot glasses.
Yes.
Yeah. And it was always so hot, bright, burning sun when we went there. Oh, yeah.
Yes. And my first experience with an indoor pool was in North Platte. There was a big community indoor pool where I would go swim.
Oh, it was so cutting edge.
And I mean, the chlorine, my eyes would be red for days.
Oh, but also they had a library that they had a massive collection of Oz books because, there's the L. Frank Baum Oz books, but then there were all these other people who sort of contributed to it. It was like a massive ongoing thing that a lot of people don't realize how big the Oz universe is. And that was the only place where I could really find a major collection of Oz books in that library. I remember that was always exciting every year.
Yes. One last taste, Gretch, before we move on is Grandma Kraft's fudge.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and those balls, those chocolate balls she made. Oh, my God. Yeah, we had a lot of delicious food in our childhood. CJ asks, Gretchen, you mentioned that you might write about the empty nest stage of life. Are you going to do that? If so, please hurry. I have a 7th grader and I'm already thinking about how my life will change when he goes to college. Elizabeth, do you think about this? I wonder if it's different for people with one child. Yes, I am going to do this. I am very excited. My open door starts in the fall. I have found out the date, which is August 22nd. And I am going to write about this. Research is me search, and I am going to tackle this for myself, and hopefully everyone will find it interesting. I'm already thinking about categories and book versus tree and all these kinds of things. And Elizabeth, how about you? Are you thinking about this?
I don't think about it obviously as much as you do, Gretchen, because it's still 4 years away, but I do think about it kind of abstractly. I think maybe Adam and I will get a puppy when Jack goes to college. Yeah. I picture a lot of us walking the dogs together. Mm-hmm. Also, it has occurred to Sarah and me, once her daughter's gone as well, that we may go on some writing team adventures, like work in another country, things like that. So I do think about it. And of course, we think, how could we possibly survive without Jack? But I know we will. Yeah. That is our role as parents, is to raise him so that he can leave home. So, well, I wouldn't say I'm worried about it yet, but I find it interesting to think about.
So you're mindful of it, which I think is the key thing, which is just train for a tough transition. Just be thinking about it and what the future can hold.
But, yeah, we have a lot of time.
You have a lot of time.
Stacy said, were the two of you as close when growing up? What advice do you have for sisters to remain close through their lives? Well, we get this question a lot, Gretchen.
Yes, we do.
I think we were always close, but in a different way, because we do have a 5.5-year gap. So we were really at totally different stages of life.
Yes.
But you were always interested in me. Like, you would do a word of the week that you would put on the refrigerator door for me to learn. You would help me like bake cookies, things like that. And then I think, well, what advice do you have for sisters to remain close? I mean, talking a lot is probably the best thing.
I think, and back to your point about the podcast, I think that's why it's helped to bring us closer, is we just have to talk all the time. But yeah, talking, texting. I mean, one thing we've said a lot is that our parents would pay for us to visit each other when we were old enough to travel. So when Elizabeth was in college and I was in law school, if she wanted to take the train to see me, our parents would pay for the train ticket. And we went on a big European trip together when I was in college and Elizabeth was in high school. And I think, Elizabeth, that was one of the ways that they just fostered us being close, is they made it easy for us to see each other.
Yes, but it's definitely a very nice thing in our lives.
It is. It is. It's a huge
lucky
thing. Elaine says, has Barnaby met Daisy and Nacho? If so, how did that go?
Not yet.
No, they live very far apart from each other.
Maybe they could FaceTime.
They have a lot in common. They are not well trained. I would say they do have that in common.
Yes. Although I would say Barnaby is a lot easier than Daisy and Nacho in terms of his jumping and barking.
Well, but he's, almost 9 years old.
True.
So we can't take credit for that.
True.
That's just the dog we've got. Yeah. And also cockapoos don't bark that much, or at least Barnaby has never barked that much. And corgis obviously are known for their barking. It's part of it's one of the things they were prized for was the barking.
Yes. As herders, their bark needed to get up to the cows. It needed to pierce.
Sound.
Yes. So, and it works.
They are exceptional with their piercing barks.
And then the second shot on Instagram says, what would you say is the other sister's worst habit? Oh my.
Elizabeth, I had to pick one for you. And I think this is what you might say is your worst habit is night snacking.
Oh yeah, that is definitely true. I struggle with that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like you're the habit queen, Gretchen. I feel like you barely even twist your hair anymore. I think you would say your worst habit, although I don't know if it's a habit or more of a quality of that, you have trouble sometimes going with the flow.
Yeah, that's my rigidity. Yep, for sure.
And that can be annoying for you and for those around you, although it doesn't really impact me very much.
But if we lived together, it would.
Right.
Anna says, what's the story of the biggest fight you've gotten into? We don't fight that much, Elizabeth.
I don't remember any fight we've ever gotten into.
I will tell you, the time when I was most exasperated with you was we were traveling together and we were doing that thing. This was a long time ago, so we didn't know where we were going. We would just take a train from one European city to the next, show up and have to figure out where to stay for the night. It was always extremely stressful and in foreign languages and all this. And I remember one time we were someplace in Italy. And it's like, okay, now we got to figure out where we're going to spend the night. We got to get oriented. How are we going to get from here to there? And you take a look around and you go like, I'll wait here with the bags while you figure out what to do next. And I was hopping mad.
Yes. Speaking of bad habits, I do have a habit of leaning on you to figure things out. And I have to admit, I do the same thing with Sarah. It is a tendency I have to let the person with me who I find to be very competent just handle things.
Well, I think that is the downside
of being
somewhat controlling, is that then others are sort of like, okay, control away. I'll wait here with the bags.
Yes, exactly.
But yeah, I don't remember us having a big fight. Yeah.
Maggie said, as an English teacher and lover of writing, I love how you both have careers that center around writing. I was wondering, did your parents do things that helped to foster this love of writing? As a mom and as a teacher, I'd like to instill a love of writing and wondered what your parents may have done or if you have suggestions. Gretchen, I have to say, we went to a high school that had phenomenal English teachers and English classes.
And history, too.
Yes,
for
but
writing.
I really credit my high school English teachers. I don't know about you.
Yeah, no, I think that's really true. Growing up, though, we did not see ourselves as people who would grow up to be writers. I mean, no one was more surprised than we were, I think, right? We loved reading and we loved writing, but we didn't see ourselves as becoming professional writers. And neither did our parents. So
yeah. And, we just always like to read. I mean, I think it's hard to make someone like to read if they don't like to read. Nobody made us like to read. We all just naturally enjoyed it. And our family vacations many times were just going to a beach and then sitting on the beach and reading for 6 hours and then going back to the place we were staying. I mean, that's what we all just like to do.
Yeah, and our parents too. And I think that's the thing, is we saw examples of them talking about books, loving books, reading books, talking about authors. We all like different kinds of books, but we very much shared that love of reading. And then Joe asks, I'm starting a newsletter myself, and I was interested to hear Gretchen talk about the satisfactions of a new identity. If I may ask, how many subscribers does she have to her newsletters, and how many do you need to make it worth the effort? Well, I have 1.2 million subscribers to the newsletter, and that's the 5 things making me happy newsletter. Woo-hoo. Please subscribe, GretchenRubin.com/newsletter. Yes, I have so much fun doing that newsletter. So yeah, and I went through a big cleanup of my newsletters. And so now it's a weekly newsletter of 5 things making me happy. Then once a month, it's 5 things to try, which is more like hacks and tips. Then one is 5 things I published. So it's sort of the highlights of things I've published. So those are the newsletters. But the question of how many do you need to make it worth the effort, I think that only you can answer that question, but I will say you will always start from zero.
Right.
And I really do think it's a very useful thing to do. I think it's a fun thing to do. I think it's a creative thing to do. I think it's a very helpful thing to do. So I'm a big fan of doing it. Elizabeth, I know, where are you and Sarah now with your newsletter? You've been wanting to do a Happier in Hollywood newsletter.
Yes, and I feel like we've done like 90% of what we need to do to start, and we just need to do that last 10%.
Well, and because that's the part where you're like, okay, now we're doing this.
Yes.
Yeah, now we're committing to it.
Yes. But you always say, the best time to have started a newsletter is, 20 years ago,
Yes.
and the second best time is now.
Yes. So I would say, Joe, I think it's very much worth it. And sometimes it's discouraging because you start from zero. Yeah, just remember, you always start from zero.
Right. Coming up, we're going to answer questions about happiness, habits, and the four tendencies. But first, this break.
Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. And on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs and gives you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, workouts, sleep, and even stress management. All you have to do is breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and you'll know what's going on with your metabolism, whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs. Then Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on your measurements. I've used Lumen. It's extremely easy to set it up and get it going and to use it. And it's absolutely fascinating for me to know what is going on with my metabolism.
So if you want to take the next step in improving your health, go to lumen.me/happier to get 15% off your Lumen. That's LUMEN.me/happier for 15% off your purchase. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. Whenever I'm gearing up for my next trip, deciding what to pack is always so stressful. The clothes I have either don't fit or worn out or just don't match. But then I discovered Quince. It's my go-to for high-quality vacation essentials I'll be packing for trips to come. Gretchen, I'm always looking for the perfect t-shirt.
Yeah.
I am so into right now Quince's organic cotton slub crew neck tees. I got black and white to take on our trip to England. They are the perfect tee.
The best part, all Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. By partnering directly with top factories, Quince cuts out the cost of the middleman and passes the savings on to us. Pack your bags with high-quality essentials from Quince. Go to quince.com/Gretchen for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/Gretchen to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/Gretchen.
Okay, Gretch, we are back with more listener questions. This comes from Colleen, who says, what is the difference between happiness and joy, and how do you see it come up in your everyday?
Well, Colleen, I was trained as a lawyer, and I have many memories of spending an entire semester arguing about the definition of contract. And if anything, happiness is a more elusive concept. There's something like 15 or 17 academic definitions of happiness. And so I say define it as you want. Happiness, joy, peace, well-being, satisfaction, contentment. So I just use the very vague but all-embracing concept of happiness. And so I don't distinguish it. I think some people like to get into the differences, but I sort of think like, well, how can you be happier? How can I be happier? However I define it. And that's what I think about. So I don't really, don't ponder those distinctions, though others do. Betsy says, does your family ever tease you about your mood since you know so much about how to be happy? They do not. Nobody in my life ever throws it up in my face like, hey, Miss Happiness, why are you so crabby? They all just understand that I have my moods just like anybody else. So I appreciate that. Gold star to my family for not teasing me in that way.
Yes, they might tease you, but not about being a happiness
Not in that way.
person.
No. Yeah.
Julie said, I would love to know if either of you have or have had therapy/psychology input and what your views are on its role in a happier life. Well, I think I've said many times on the podcast, Gretchen, I have done therapy a few times in my life. I think it's incredibly valuable. And in fact, I'm planning on my 24 for 24 list is to get back into therapy as Jack enters high school. I think it's a good time for me to do therapy and sort of examine just myself as a parent and how I want to be with him. So we'll be talking more about that in the future.
And I have never done therapy myself, but I think it's incredibly valuable. Have seen it, be super helpful for people. So I think has a very big role to play in a happier life. Bridget said, your approach to happiness is very disciplined. Do you ever feel constrained or like you need more freedom? Well, Bridget, maybe it's just me or maybe it's all upholders, but I do not experience discipline as being constraining. I mean, the motto of upholders is discipline is my freedom. And I really feel that. I feel like discipline gives me freedom. Discipline, I don't know how to say it other than that. And I think a lot of people just sort of can't understand that. I think it's one of these examples of like people really have different perspectives.
Yes. It's like if you know, right?
Yes. Yeah. And
Other upholders understand.
Yeah. And so it doesn't feel burdensome or constricting because it's it's the way I want to be. So I experience it as freedom. So interesting question.
Genevieve said, is there such a thing as upholder rebellion or some equivalent? Definitely feel most at home with that tendency, but wonder if I should be accomplishing more on a daily basis.
Well, I have noticed that upholders who tip to obliger, because, some upholders tip to questioner, which is what I do, and then some upholders tip to obliger, that they do sometimes show a kind of obliger rebellion. But remember, as an upholder, always bring it back to your inner expectations for yourself. And I think that's what keeps it from being a true rebellion, as you see from an obliger, because usually upholders can say, okay, wait a minute, this is too much. I need to address this. But I think it's a good thing to be aware of, because I have talked to upholders who feel like they kind of come up against that limit.
And Marcy says, do you think you would have landed on the same names for the Four Tendencies if you belonged to one of the others? What would a rebel or questioner have come up with as tendency names? Now, isn't that an interesting question?
Well, I will say this. I labored for maybe years coming up with the names of them. I mean, it was so hard. So I would love to know what somebody else would come up with, because I really struggled. And it's funny, like with rebel, some people are like, but rebel is such a terrible name. But other people say to me, like, but of course everybody wants to be a rebel.
Right.
So again, it's like, is it bad? Is it good? I mean, I remember the day when I thought of the term obliging, that it's obliging. It has this association of like coming from the outside. So anyway, I would love to know what other people came up with.
Yes.
At the time, I asked for suggestions and nobody came. In my vanity, I would say nobody came up with anything that was better than what I had. But again, I am coming from an upholder, so it could be. It was really, really hard to do, however.
Yes, I would love to hear what other people think good tendency names would be.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Gretch, coming up, we have more questions, but first this break.
We all belong outside. We're drawn to nature, whether it's the recorded sounds of the ocean we doze off to, or the succulents that adorn our homes. Nature makes all of our lives, well, better. Despite all this, we often go about our busy lives removed from it. But the outdoors is closer than we realize. With AllTrails, you can discover trails nearby and explore confidently. With offline maps and on-trail navigation, download the free app today and make the most of your summer with AllTrails.
Selling a little or a lot? Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. From the launch your online shop stage, to the first real-life store stage, all the way to the did we just hit 1 million orders stage. Shopify's here to help you grow. Whether you're selling scented soap or offering outdoor outfits, Shopify helps you sell everywhere. From their all-in-one e-commerce platform to their in-person POS system, wherever and whatever you're selling, Shopify's got you covered. Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout. 15% better on average compared to other leading commerce platforms. And sell more with less effort thanks to Shopify Magic, your AI-powered all-star. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the US. And Shopify is the global force behind Allbirds, Rothy's, and Brooklinen, and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across 175 countries. Plus, Shopify's award-winning 24/7 help is there to support your success every step of the way. Because businesses that grow, grow with Shopify. Sign Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Odyssey Podcast, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Odyssey Podcast now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/Odyssey Podcast.
Well, we got a minute. I'm going to buy that truck I've been wanting.
Wait, don't you need like weeks to shop for a car?
I don't. Carvana makes it super convenient to find exactly what I want.
Hold up. You're buying a car on your phone? Isn't that more of a laptop thing?
You can shop wherever you want.
I like to do my research, read reviews, compare models. Plus, Carvana has thousands of options. How'd you decide on that truck?
Because I like it.
Oh, that is a great reason.
Go to Carvana.com to sell your car the convenient way.
Okay, Gretch, we are back. Stacy says, do you have plans to do an episode on the 4 tendencies for young adults/teens?
That's a great idea. Thank you, Stacy. We don't have a plan to do that, but that would be super fun. You know, on and off, I've been talking about having a quiz for children. It's hard to do a quiz like that because the difference between like a 5-year-old and a 15-year-old is so large. But doing an episode on it is a great idea. So I am going to make a note of that in the planning doc.
Yes, you know, I've never had Jack take the 4 tendency quiz, so I
there
think
you
now
go.
is the time.
Oh, I would be fascinated. I have a suspicion, but I want to know what the quiz says.
All right.
Rebecca says, why don't questioners like to be questioned? Why does my obliger spouse not oblige me? How can you get a rebel to do the dishes? Okay, that is a long conversation. Read the 4 Tendencies book and all will be revealed. But here's the quick answers. Why don't questioners like to be questioned? I don't know. It's ironic. Yes, it is. I'm married to a questioner who doesn't like to answer questions. They like to teach, but they do not like to answer questions. It is just a pattern. They feel like they've done the research. They know what they think the right answer is. They don't feel like answering questions. That's why. Why does my obliger spouse not oblige me? Well, that's a very sweet answer. It's for a very romantic reason. It's because your obliger is saying, oh, sweetheart, you are so close to me. You are like me. So I will ignore you just the way I will ignore me. And that's why I always say with accountability partners, a sweetheart usually is not a good accountability partner because they're too inner. They count as inner, not outer, and obligers need outer accountability. So that's why an obliger spouse does not oblige. They don't feel like they have, that's not an outer expectation. And then how do you get the rebel to do the dishes? Okay, here's a couple lightning round style answers. Again, this is the longest chapter in the book. The first is identity. If you appeal to identity, you're a considerate partner. You're a fair person. You're someone who does your share. You're somebody who keeps your word. Okay, so that's identity. One is information, consequences, choice. If you don't do the dishes, neither will I, and so their dishes just won't be done. That's a consequence, but then you have to stick to it because if you rescue or dive in at the last minute and fix it, then it won't work. You have to allow consequences to fall. Then also, sometimes this works with rebels, not always, but sometimes, is you can ask a rebel to do something out of love for you. Not because they have to do it, not because they're supposed to do it, not even because they said they would do it. They are choosing to do it out of love for you. And you just say, like, for whatever reason, this is just something that makes me bonkers, or like whatever the reason it is that it matters to you. And just say, can you choose to do it out of love for me? And remember, it's a choice that they make. They're choosing to do it out of love for you. And that works with some rebels. So those are some quick answers.
Okay, Gretch. Sarah says, I have been fascinated by the 4 Tendencies framework and how it can help us understand ourselves and others better. I'm a therapist working with children and young people and often wonder what the links between early attachment relationships and the tendencies may be. I just wonder if as sisters, you think that the tendencies of siblings can impact the formation of tendencies. You two obviously have a great relationship. Do you think this is more possible because of your upholder-obliger combination rather than upholder-rebel, for example? I wonder if you have a sense of how your own early relationships may have shaped your tendencies. I'm sure there's a research project here waiting to happen. Well, Gretch, I think you think the tendencies are, you're born with your tendencies.
Yes. No, I'm a big believer in the genetic roots of personality, and I do think that this is something you bring into the world. So I don't think that there's interplay in terms of our tendency. You're an obliger, and that is the tendency that gets along the most easily with the other 3 tendencies. Sarah mentions upholder rebel. That does tend to be hard to manage because, like, rebels love spontaneity. And as we were saying, upholders can be rigid. And so they just have a different approach. So that might be harder. The fact that I'm an upholder and you're an obliger, that's kind of a congenial pairing. So I think it could affect us in that way, but I don't think it affects why we are what we are.
I wonder how two rebels would be, two rebel siblings. You could see that them getting along great or not well at all.
Yes.
Interesting. Love to hear from two rebel siblings.
Yes, right. That would be fascinating. Tracy says, as a fellow hardcore upholder, I am always surprised that you accomplish about 50% of your list each year with 20 for 20, 24 for 24, etc. I always feel like if it's on my list, it needs to be done. Well, Tracy, I think very carefully when I make my list. I say, I do not need to do all these things. I am not expecting that for myself because I want to challenge myself to do things that maybe I can't do. I find as an upholder, I can be too conservative because I worry that if I can't finish something, I don't want to start it. And I think that makes me too cautious. And so part of what I try to do with the 24 for 24 list is to say, well, I can succeed by failing. Like maybe I won't have as many days of policy that I plan on, or maybe I won't have my perfume party for my friends, but I still want to put it on the list because I want to aim for it.
The list is also just something that's fun to have as an aspiration or just, a daydream. Sometimes we're not going to do everything, and that's okay.
And that's okay.
Finally, Jay said, what time of day would you have a taste party if you're not serving a meal? After dinner, in lieu of dinner, morning, afternoon, those seem like odd times to ask people over.
Okay, so Jay is referring to the taste party that I describe in my book, Life in Five Senses. And this is super fun. I had friends come over and we tasted varieties of apples. We tasted the magic of Heinz ketchup. We did the thing where you have a Jelly Belly with your nose plugged and then with your nose unplugged. We compared potato chips, brands, talked about the candies that we ate when we were kids. Anyway, it was a very fun taste party. And I agree, it's kind of an odd thing to do. And what I learned at Flavor University is that if you're tasting something, you want to be neither full nor hungry. So what I did is I told people to come over at 4:00 on a Sunday. And I said very specifically, try not to be full or hungry. And it will only last an hour and a half. And so I thought, because people knew it was from 4 to 5:30, they knew that there wasn't going to be dinner there. And I thought I just wanted it to be a taste party. I didn't want it to turn into a dinner party because, me, Elizabeth, I would have found that way too stressful to have two social occasions at once.
Yeah.
But I have to say, it was just super fun. It was like a super fun short thing. And I had everything ready, and people did not seem to be that surprised or inconvenienced or something by this kind of quirky time to do something social. So I just made it clear what people were getting into, because I think sometimes people they're just like, well, I just want to know what this is.
Right.
So I tried to set expectations very clearly. So people knew this was just like a fun thing. It wasn't in lieu of a meal.
Yes. I think Sunday's a good day for that. You could see it 2 p.m. on Sunday, after lunch on Sunday would be another good time.
Exactly. Where it's just sort of a fun little activity. It'd be fun to do with kids, actually. I didn't even think about that. If you had let's compare these 5 vanilla ice creams and rate them or something. I could see children getting into that. It's fun. Well, there were so many interesting questions. Thank you, listeners, for sending in such a great range of topics.
And we're going to be back in a future episode in a few weeks with more questions about the podcast, about writing, about our personal lives. So stay tuned for part 2 in a few weeks.
Yeah, and if you have additional questions, slide them in right away. Let us know what you thought or what you want to know on Instagram, Threads, TikTok, Facebook. You can drop us an email at podcast@gretchenrubin.com. As always, you can go to the show notes. This is happiercast.com/489 for everything related to this episode.
Yeah. And what's the resource this week, Gretch?
Okay, well, yesterday was Halfway Day. Love Halfway Day. It is such a great catalyst to take stock. And while you're thinking about what you want for the rest of the year, you might want to think about the Habits for Happiness quiz. It can really help you decide what is the new habit that you might aim for that will give you the biggest boost to your happiness. That's what this quiz will tell you. If you're going to do one thing, one new habit, what should that habit be? Because people are always asking me, what's the one thing I should do? I'm like, It depends on you. So this quiz tells you this is a great time. Summer is a great time sometimes to tackle one of these things. You can find the Habits for Happiness quiz at happiercast.com/quiz. And also, if you want to take the Four Tendencies quiz, that's also at happiercast.com/quiz. And Elizabeth, what are we reading? We were talking about our love for reading earlier, and we still love to read. What are you reading?
I am reading You Have a Match by Emma Lord.
And I am reading Sweetwater by Roxana Robinson. And that's it for this episode of Happier. We hope you enjoyed this Ask Us Anything.
Thank you to our executive producer, Chuck Reed, and everyone at Odyssey. Get in touch. Gretchen's on Instagram, Threads, Facebook, and TikTok at Gretchen Rubin, and I'm on Instagram and Threads at Liz Craft. Our email address is podcast@gretchenrubin.com.
And if you like this show, it would mean so much to us if you'd be willing to take 30 seconds to do this. If you could follow or subscribe to Happier, that really helps us with the show, and it really helps you because then you'll never miss an episode. To do that, just go to the Happier with Gretchen Rubin show page on Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts, and just tap the plus sign in the upper right-hand corner or click on follow. That is a really helpful thing to do to the podcast. And while you're there, if you'd be willing to give us a 5-star rating, a review, share an episode with someone you love, we would be so grateful. And here's your rhyme. If you like the show, tell someone you know.
Until next week, I'm Elizabeth Craft.
And I'm Gretchen Rubin. Thanks for joining us. Onward and upward.
Yeah, Gretch, I'm loving all of your rhymes, but now I feel like we have to have one every week for the rest of time.
Yeah, well, there are going to be some repetitions, I
Okay.
think, but I don't know. I love the fluency heuristic. What can I say? From the Onward Project.